Welcome everyone to the DLT4EU final event. My name is Marika IJscoot. I'm a sustainable lifestyle expert as well as a speaker and presenter, and it's a real honor to be your host for this festive program. Thank you so much for joining us at this public closing session. We will share insights and learn from what has been achieved in this year and a half, as well as briefly look ahead towards future opportunities for how blockchain can help solve humanity's biggest challenges. We aim to show you today that technology and early stage innovation can play a vital role in providing solutions for the public and social good. DLT4EU is an accelerator program funded by the European Commission for initiatives based on distributed ledger technology, best known as blockchain, applications. 8 teams of DLT developers were connected to public and social sector organizations to tackle societal and environmental issues. These public bodies, or what we call the challenge owners, are the City of Helsingborg, the City of Sandboy, the Great London Authority, the Vodafone Foundation, the Chief Technology Office Amsterdam, the United Nations Development Programme, the Digital Future Society, and the London Legacy Development Corporation. We have a jam-packed agenda today, filled with inspiring contributions from some of the sector's leading voices. We start with opening remarks by the European Commission about actions they are taking to support programs like DLT. Then we'll offer a roundtable where experts discuss the future of blockchain and innovative solutions. We'll showcase the 8 amazing initiatives that are the result of this accelerator program, and we'll reveal the 3 teams that are awarded and chosen to receive follow-up funding from the European Commission. So exciting. And we want to hear from you as well, of course. You can interact with us through Surveyometer, where we will ask for your input and opinion. So why don't we start with that right away? Take your phone and scan the QR code that appears below right now to answer the first question. If this doesn't work for you, then we're also sharing the link in the YouTube live chat. The question that appears is, do you have any experience with blockchain for the common good? You can answer, I work in this field myself. I've heard about it, but don't know much about it. I only know about blockchain. This combination is new to me, or I don't know much about blockchain. So let's see what your answer is. If I were to answer this question, I would have to say, I know about blockchain and also this combination because a few years ago, I presented a meeting about how we can use blockchain to improve working conditions in the supply chain of, for instance, coconuts and pineapples. So how blockchain can be used to make sure that every step of the way in how the people have to work, so the working hours, what they earn per hour, and all the stages of the pineapples and the coconuts, from actually really sourcing them all the way to the store here in the Netherlands, where I am at this particular moment in Amsterdam. So that's where I learned, I think probably 4 or 5 years ago, about how we can use blockchain to try and improve the world. So let's see what your answer is. How many people, for instance, work in this field? How many people know about blockchain a bit, but maybe not about the combination of using it for the common good? I'm waiting for your answers. So I'm getting them right now. Someone's writing them down for me. Let's see what you, oh, this is the results and the question already. You can see them, but I can't read them. So that's maybe an interesting part of making a live show, right? That you can really tell that it's live because you have already information that I don't have. Someone is writing it down for me very, very quickly at the moment. And then, of course, we'll continue with the program. I almost want to stand up and go and read them, but that's maybe a bit weird in your screen when all of a sudden I'm start running around to sort of get the answers for us. Okay, here it comes. It says people who work in the field is 13%, but over half of you haven't heard of this combination of working with blockchain, but then also using it for the common good. So that's half of you. 13% know about blockchain, not so much, and 24% have answered the last question. Or gave the last answer, I don't know much about blockchain at all. So 13, 50, 13, 24. That's very interesting that many of you are still learning today about the combination of blockchain and using it for the common good. Now, we'd love it for you if you could share about this event on social media by using the hashtag DLT4EU final event on Twitter and Instagram. Right, time to get started. Please join me in welcoming Fabrizio Sestini, Senior Expert Digital Social Innovation at DG Connect, European Commission. Fabrizio Sestini, the floor is yours. Fabrizio, I'm not sure if people have heard what you said before. Probably your microphone was muted. So if you could start again, that would be great.
It was. So good morning to everybody. Thanks to you and to all the organizers of this very interesting event. And I will just say a few words about blockchain without pretending to be, of course, an expert in this field. But it's a very unusual area of research. And it's also a very dividing one. It's an area that for somebody is the future of the internet, and for somebody else is the end of the world. And for good reasons in both cases. What we can say is that from a technological point of view, it's for sure the most inefficient way of storing information. From a privacy point of view, the jury is still out, whether it has benefits or disadvantages. From a governance point of view, it is a very interesting way to ensure mutual trust between entities who usually don't trust each other. And it is exactly this potential of blockchains to ensure mutual trust where other ways are ineffective or not yet applied, that we wanted to explore with this project. As you know, DLT4EU is a project which comes out of a proposal from the European Parliament to stimulate the growth of the ecosystem of developers in the area of blockchains for social and public good. So for any area which are not directly related to financial applications, electronic currencies, etc. And it's an area where some of you may know we have also launched other initiatives, such as, for instance, the Blockchains for Social Good prize, with 6 prizes which were awarded in the last July. In general, these possibilities for decentralization, it's an area where assessments, especially from a policy point of view, are very difficult to make a priori just based on the technicalities. It's an area where we have to get our hands dirty and to experiment in the real world with real use cases which have a clear social value. And that is exactly what I'm looking forward as the results of this project, to stimulate this kind of initiatives, to have concrete use cases that we can evaluate, so to understand the true potential of blockchain for this. And I want also to mention other initiatives, other examples of concrete use cases, where blockchain is one of the elements which allows these developments, but not, of course, the end of the research, such as, for instance, the project Decode, which we founded in the last years, and which conducted very interesting experiments with municipalities in Europe based on blockchain, but not only blockchain developments. The project Ledger, which is providing seeding funding for innovators working in this field, who just closed a couple of months ago its last third call in this area. And then, of course, this blockchain is also an area where we have a broader strategy, including also all the financial aspects. And this broader strategy includes, for instance, areas such as building an European public service blockchain, or promoting legal certainty, which is a key aspect in blockchain developments, increasing and ensuring also funding for research and innovation, also in the area of blockchain for sustainability, so blockchain for social good and blockchain for contributing to the Green Deal in many different areas, of course, including environment. And then also supporting interoperability, standards, skill development, and interaction with the community through, for instance, the EC Blockchain Observatory. That's it from my side. I really wish you a very interesting event, and I'm looking forward to learn a lot from these 2 hours. Thank you.
Many thanks for this and for your important work, Fabrizio Sestini. Our second speaker is Liz Corbin, Director of the Metabolic Institute and Program Coordinator of the DLT4EU Accelerator. She gives an overview of the program and the most relevant insights that were gained. Liz Corbin, if you could turn on your microphone, we would love to hear from you.
Yes, thanks. And good morning, everyone. We're really thrilled to have you all here and taking part of our final event. Indeed, actually, really similar to what Fabrizio is already commenting on. I think the DLT4EU program can really tell us a lot and gives us really concrete lessons learned on the role that DLT, distributed ledger technologies, could play in the public sector. So what we've seen over the last 1.5 years of running the program is that DLTs do have the potential to create real value in the public and social sector. They can bring the much needed transparency and efficiency to public goods and services. They can facilitate multi-stakeholder systems that are often highly complex, particularly when you look at public-private value chains. And they can enable systems for participatory decision-making, where communities are taking a far more active role in shaping civic life. But what we have also learned through the program, and what it's also shown, is that there's real key barriers to the meaningful adoption of DLTs within the public sector, and they're quite persistent. The technology is still largely unknown and maybe misunderstood in the public sector, while hands-on experimentation with the technology really helps to build a greater understanding of its possibilities and use cases. Collaboration between public sector actors and bodies and DLT developers or technical experts is still very rare. Moreover, variations in EU and national regulation, for example, GDPR, has created a high degree of uncertainty for DLT use cases that engage and empower citizens. And DLTs are most often being developed at this moment still within the private sector, far removed from clear use cases and without early stage engagement with public bodies. Now that the program is ending, a key lesson learned for us is that if we really want to realize the full potential of DLTs for the common good, the public sector and key actors within that space have to become a pinnacle part of the process from the very beginning. To develop meaningful DLTs for the public and social good, close collaboration between public bodies and DLT developers focused on clear use cases is critical. The public sector needs to be a part of the process from the very beginning to find those use cases and to guide the development of the technology in ways that are the most relevant and meaningful to public and social beneficiaries. Through the program, we found that the ecosystem-based acceleration model we deployed was a key element for fostering this type of early stage and collaborative experimentation. The virtual field lab model, or VFL as we called it in particular, provided a unique virtual environment for DLT-based prototyping that fostered deep collaboration between public actors and DLT developers. And by focusing each VFL around a real-world use case, teams were able to guide technical development in a real focused way. In addition to the VFLs, the ecosystem or the community that we curated around the program was critical. Creating DLTs for public good is not just a technical challenge. It's a highly complex space that requires a real diverse set of experts and practitioners working across impact-driven finance, UX and UI design, open source licensing, business models, participatory governance, and impact assessment, just to name a few. By curating an ecosystem of experts and practitioners around the VFLs, we were able to foster an agile acceleration approach, getting practical experts to the teams as and when they were needed. And this drastically reduced barriers and uncertainties that are often inherent and baked within DLT development and really enriched the innovation process. So it's for these reasons that we're really excited about replicating the DLT4EU model across broader experimentation or incubation programs. For us, it's really key that the next iteration of the program moves away from a short-term accelerator model that often mirrors the kind of cyclical boom or bust of Silicon Valley. And we want to move towards a long-term resilient innovation ecosystem. We imagine a near future where there's VFLs in every city in Europe that are incubating solutions to real-world challenges through place-based prototyping. And these VFLs are connected to a pan-European ecosystem of experts who can guide the development of meaningful DLTs and transfer lessons learned by open sourcing successful solutions. So thank you all again for coming. We are absolutely thrilled to see such a diverse group in the audience, which our poll wonderfully told us. And I'm really looking forward to the roundtable session next, where Alice, the program manager of DLT, can share much more specific use case examples from the program.
Thank you so much, Liz Corbin. That is so inspiring to hear, and that vision of that world sounds amazing, to be honest. Indeed, next up is that roundtable where we get to hear from 5 very, very inspiring experts. But to connect all of them all over the world takes a while, so bear with us for hopefully about a minute where we connect everyone for the roundtable. Welcome to the Roundtable, an opportunity to learn from the experiences of 5 experts in designing, testing, and supporting early stage innovation. At the end of this roundtable, there will be a Q&A session for which you can ask questions via Twitter using the hashtag DLT4EU final event or via the YouTube live chat. So don't hesitate to send yours in during the discussion. This roundtable is led by Alex Polvora. He is a policy analyst at the Joint Research Centre, the European Commission, and has a massive amount of experience with programs such as this. Alex, over to you.
Thank you. So welcome everyone. I think we have 5 amazing panelists today. If you don't know them already, I can tell you that they are at the cutting edge of the intersection on emerging tech and social and public innovation. So I think this will be a quite interesting discussion today. As you know, the DLT4EU was focused from the beginning on acceleration of blockchains and other DLTs for social and public sectors. And as you heard from Liz just a while ago, this was extremely successful. However, there's a thing about this project that really appeals to me. When we started to design what would become the DLT4EU, and when we started to negotiate the funding between the European Commission and the European Parliament, as Fabrizio just mentioned also, our idea was never to push only an accelerator for DLTs. The ultimate goal for what then became the DLT4Good project, which is the larger umbrella where the DLT4EU emerges, it was always to test new models of innovation for emerging tech solutions with public and social good in mind. And this is also what Liz mentioned, that this should be what pushes the results of the DLT4EU forward. So I'm really happy that the venture teams and the challenge owners came up with such amazing projects. And I want to thank you, all the organizations involved, especially because they brought the green and digital transitions to the front. But I'm also eager and I'm really, really happy to see that a new model was put into place. And there's a lot of learnings and best practices here. And especially this was made in quarantine modes. So I'm really eager to see how this could happen maybe in 2022, 2023 in a full setting with no limitations whatsoever, with no online setbacks. So without further ado, our first panelist, Alice McNeil. Alice is the DLT4EU program manager at Metabolic Institute, and she's an expert on network innovation in impactful businesses. So floor is yours, Alice.
Thank you very much, Alex. It's a real pleasure to be here and also to share the experience with everyone on the panel. When thinking about what to share today, it was really hard. It's been such a rich and diverse journey, I think, for all 8 VFLs who've been involved in this program. But I'm going to try and bring out just 3 key insights I'd like to share, especially for those who are thinking of replicating or running their own program in a similar way. So the first is a theme that's already been drawn on already, which is it was absolutely critical that we built this accelerator as a collaborative build on top of things that already have been running with success. So the Ledger program, DLT4Good, the Odyssey hackathon, and really try and bring that ecosystem into a new phase of evolution and knit together the expertise that was already existing and working on this in this field. And to do that, we actually actively brought these organizations into the ecosystem and into the accelerator, whether they were subject matter experts who advised us on the design or actually participated as mentors in the VFLs themselves. The second thing is that we really needed a model to actually fold the challenge owners, so these public and social sector organizations, into the innovation process in a much more deep and meaningful way than I think often they engage. Sometimes it's usually just for them about procuring an external private company, but in this model with the VFL, we were able to bring them right into the innovation process from the very beginning and actually create a forum in which they were able to directly provide their expertise to the venture teams. That's quite a rare moment. It's very unusual for young companies to be able to have direct access, expertise, and guidance from such public actors. And that's where this model really, really was successful. In that, we also wanted to embed practitioners, so people, organizations, entrepreneurs who had already either successfully or sometimes unsuccessfully tried to innovate in the public and social sectors. This was also critical to ensuring that the development that took place was really grounded, balanced with theoretical and policy context as well. And lastly, the thing I'd really like to draw on is the fact that this took a really strong active curation role, not just by the DLT4EU consortium, but also our partners, the GRC and the European Commission and the broader EU environment. You really need to strategically identify and help set up at each of these VFLs. We also had a very proactive venture scouting strategy. We didn't just open the gates and people applied. We actively went and found those teams who could work with the public sector, and match made very early on in the process. And I think this is quite a key insight for ensuring that actually this type of innovation is very much demand-led, not a kind of the market will fix the innovation perspective. Back over to you, Alex.
So our next panelist, in fact, it's Giulio Quadgiotto. And Giulio is head of strategic innovation of UNDP, and he has a vast experience in advising public and social organizations on innovation in multiple dimensions. So Giulio, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Alexander, for the invitation. And not surprisingly, the things that I'm going to mention build very much on the points that Alice just mentioned. So the first thing that I would say is actually just this morning, I was reading a blog post from a startup program of France that said their experience of having their technology adopted by the public sector has been like a heart transplant. And the question is, how do we make the heart transplant process less traumatic? How do we get these two worlds to get to know each other much better before? And Alice alluded to that. At the moment, the main interface we have between these two different worlds is procurement. And here you have a problem that public sector or development organization like us often don't even know what to procure and what technology exists out there. And on the other side, startups don't really understand necessarily the world of the public sector. So can we, what type of experimentation can we do with procurement modalities and beyond to actually encourage, just like you have done, the two worlds to dialogue and understand each other for reciprocal benefit, of course. So that's one question. The second question to me has to do if we want to get more innovation of a type that really solves a social problem. I think we need to talk about a different time horizon. I think that's already alluded to, right? So moving from the accelerator to have patient capital to move beyond that. But also take that curation process that Alice talked about to a somewhat a different level. I think we also often have in mind this funneling model of Silicon Valley, saying we ultimately want to boil down to one or two winners that become unicorns. How do we actually adopt an opposite logic when you're dealing with really complex social issues that says we want to expand our options rather than reduce them to one or two solutions that then are scaled up? How do we organize our financing for that? And the final point that I would like to make is really about how do we actually measure success or understand what happens at early stages, what contributes success? And do we have a right methodology and metrics to actually think about what makes look at initially like a not a good fit, but actually allow for a process of exploration in the longer term? Again, oftentimes for difficult social issues, we oblique strategies work better than the direct ones, and having some slack in terms of actually what we define success at the beginning might just leave us options to explore solutions that are less obvious. So these three things, I would say, for me, important ones: procurement, financing models, also moving beyond the and then finally, how do we measure and evaluate success?
Thank you so much, Giulio. This is getting interesting. Adding to what Alice said, now Giulio, and now I introduce Francesca Bria. Francesca is president of the Italian Innovation Funds. She's also senior advisor to the UN on digital citizen rights, and also well known as leading digital transformation of public and social sectors. So Francesca, the floor is yours.
Yes. So thank you very much, and it's great to be here with you. Very timely, this conversation, because I think at the moment, obviously, we are still in a pandemic, but we have to get out of this pandemic phase. And with Next Generation EU and the Digital Europe program, I think we have an historic opportunity to build a 21st century digital economy for Europe. And we are setting out very ambitious, on one side, digital industrial policy, but also a new regulatory framework that can help us to get there. And I'm absolutely sure that Europe needs its own model of digital sovereignty with native tech, and that European native tech can only be open source, decentralized, and privacy preserving, which means technology built with fundamental rights at its very core, that delivers social impact, that deliver environmental impact, and that preserve the rights of citizens and the rights of workers. I think that EU tech regulation is moving on the right direction for what we are talking about. We are focusing on open source technology markets, data portability and sharing, and also setting privacy preserving standards and protocols while restricting gatekeepers with antitrust and competition policies. This is all absolutely important if we want to foster an open ecosystem where different solutions that deliver public and social good can actually compete. So we need to make this very oligopolistic digital market less so, and also shift away the business model from surveillance economics to economics for the public good. But also we need regulations such as the right to innovate. For example, we are prototyping this kind of approach in the Italian legislation now. For example, if you are a startup or a company or a person with innovative ideas, you have to be able to test it and demonstrate its innovativeness, but also to show in a simple way that it is valid, the innovation, it can scale, and that it can deliver social and environmental impact. And this should and can become the norm in regulation. The second point is that we really need to boost more demand for native tech products that are suited to the European conditions and preferences. And we can do that via a mix of instruments, such as standard settings, such as subsidies on one side and investment in venture capital, and also, as Giulio was saying, in more long-term patient capital, and public procurement, of course. I mean, I cannot stress more how important it is to change the mindset and to be courageous about what we can do with innovative public procurement. For instance, we can integrate decentralized privacy-friendly standards, open source, and data sovereignty clauses in public procurement contracts. I've done it in Barcelona. It is possible to do it. And with that, we can create a large market, because the barrier to entry for small and medium-sized businesses, and even more for cooperatives or just, grassroots organization, is a very important issue. So we want to make sure that procurement policy gives the same opportunity to startups, SMEs, open source communities to work with the public administration. And by the way, political will is important. Why don't we hire the leaders of the open source decentralized communities to come in the public sector and lead those programs? They have the right mindset, they know what needs to be done, and maybe it can happen better if they're there. Let me also just say that we shouldn't shy away from saying that we want to make it easy for tech innovators to scale up at pan-European and global level. I'm sure that we need to build European digital champions. Yes, we need them, because otherwise we are not going to be able to compete with US and Chinese innovation. This is very clear. So what is missing is also capital. As Giulio was saying, I'm going to finish soon. We need massive investment in critical infrastructures, as we are doing with Next Generation EU and the Digital Europe program. But also we need larger markets with in risk-taking equity, with a functioning single market and a pan-EU regulatory regime. If we want to compete on innovation, maybe we need an organizational breakthrough in Europe, investing in startup accelerators and small companies that can scale. So why don't we look at what the European Innovation Council is doing, but coordinating more with national innovation funds and new agencies for disruptive innovation, with public-private partnership, with strategic mission at fully European level? Maybe we can set up an open source, decentralized privacy enhancing technology fund or something like that, but it should be a 100 billion fund, because we need critical masses resources right now to scale European tech, which is based on those kind of principles. So just to conclude, I think that we have a lot of options to create, to scale up and create new marketplaces in sectors that are needed to transform our economies as societies: smart mobility, smart citizen services, cities participation, that are designed to plug in local taxation, in labor standards, and with European licensing rules. We can do it, but we need to basically take everything you are doing and bring it to the next level. And the next level, I think, should be ambitious and should be at the very core of this opportunity we have now with Next Generation EU and the Digital Europe program. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Francesca. This is getting higher again. And thank you also for mentioning the new European Innovation Council, because in fact, we need to look at these new actors in terms of EU policy and figure out how we can really push these new ideas onto what they will plan to do in the next couple of years. So now I'll bring João Farinha into the mix. João is advisor to the Portuguese Secretary of State for Digital Transition. He's an expert on social innovation and social entrepreneurship, and we also were lucky enough to have him as a dedicated mentor in the Accelerator. João, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Alexandre and everyone, and thank you, first of all, for the invitation. I wish to congratulate the DLT4EU team and all the ventures and entrepreneurs. These kind of programs are crucial to make concrete policy advances in the way that they present use cases on the use of tech for good, but also for the process in itself, because they destroy misconceptions around innovative solutions and also methodologies, and also around the possibility of effective collaboration of public and private sectors, including the for-profit and the non-for-profit entities. And that tech, even that one that is used frequently in the dark side of the force as DLTs, can be in itself a force of good and defense of individual rights and public interest. And it was with this kind of mindset that in 2015, the Portuguese government set up a social innovation and entrepreneurship funding program, not restricted specifically to tech solutions, but that mobilized European Social Fund to support social entrepreneurship, nonprofits and public entities in developing innovative solutions to tackle new and persistent social challenges. And in designing this and implementing in this program, we had to face some challenges around how to finance early stage ventures, how to connect social entrepreneurs and all the different actors in the ecosystem. And to start up, and in a nutshell, I can share some bullets and lessons learned that certainly are common with other such programs. First, we need to design several funding instruments aligned with the venture's life cycles, from the early entrepreneur capacitation, early stage, to the growth and even internationalization stages. The challenges in each phase are not the same, and that represents having different mechanisms, having different sources, funding sources aboard, for example, the mix of grants, equity, and debt, mixing the funding sources from public, philanthropic, and even venture capital. There isn't a single solution. It has to be custom-made to every phase. Second, we need to foster the ecosystem, namely accelerators and incubators, so we can root social innovation in territories, but also because direct funding is not enough. An acceleration program such as this one gives something that each as much value as money, that is knowledge. So this may be obvious, but we think we need to nurture also this ecosystem building part. And third, we need to align social innovation funding with public policy priorities, and even make these kind of programs a testing ground for future policies with the participation of the agencies responsible for policy implementation, as you have done, but also leave space for the public sector to be provoked, even teased, with efficiency and creativity of innovative solutions, and with attention to neglected social challenges that sometimes, or most times, public sector is still not addressing or prioritizing. So alignment, and also leaving space for some provocation. And with concern of innovative use of tech, this is something also very important. And fourth and last, not connected specifically with the Portugal Social Innovation Program, but addressing a wider innovation need, as other countries are already doing, we are setting up a legal framework for specific regulatory sandboxes and then a connected network of testbeds that can create conditions, for example, for cutting edge tech to be developed and tested before release. And we hope this will be particularly relevant for on the upcoming years for technologies such as the DLTs and all its potential applications, even the commercial applications, but also the public and the social sector goods. And Alex, for my initial contributions, I think I'll stick to these points. Thank you.
Thank you so much, João. And also for the comment on leaving space to provoke the public sector, because sometimes public sector doesn't really know what's possible, and a lot of actors out there can really put some salt on the wounds. So next now, Chris Speed. Chris is chair of design informatics at the Edinburgh College of Art. He was one of the jury members in the final evaluation of Accelerator, in fact, and he specialized on how tech can engage through social experiment and the arts. And in fact, he did one of the most interesting speculative projects in blockchain that I've seen a couple of years ago. So Chris, floor is yours.
Thank you. And yeah, the Gig Bliss hairdryer range, I'm sure is still available at shops near you. Thinking how design helps us think about different futures. So look, what's really fascinating is how on earth do we use DLTs in the public sector and begin to support an adoption program? And it's really hard, right? I mean, adoption is tough. Adoption is hard in any new technology space. And I think it's really hard in DLTs. Not only the perceived products hard to imagine, both from a public or a public services perspective, but actually the services with which we think DLTs can transform society, they're really hard to get to, because in many ways we've got some of the things that we need after the 20th century. As Kathy Mulligan said, the blockchain is the most extraordinary thought experiment for society of the 21st century, because it challenges so much of what we think we have now and what we might want to have in fairer, safer, more inclusive societies. I always used to think that Henry Ford had it easy. When he asked what people want, they said faster horses. I mean, to be honest, at least people knew they wanted horses. For blockchain, I'm not sure what people think or what we think people actually want, because it's certainly not new forms of money, is it? Because that's a sideshow, and we all know that it's not the central proposition of DLTs. So I'm fascinated in design, and particularly design's ability to convene teams around stories, visions, and ultimately experiences, ways of beginning to experience and understand what this technology can do for us, and how programs like yours really open up different ways of thinking. We also know that Elizabeth Shove talks about comfort, cleanliness, and convenience, 3 C's that drive adoption. And let's be honest, after a year of pandemic, you're not going to adopt things that aren't clean, comfortable, and certainly convenient. So we've got to find out how the DLT4EU projects can really begin to set up completely new imaginaries that are far away from the centralized imaginaries that we're still seeing move technology, data, and products and services. So vital for the grand challenges, I think, that we face into the near future is a return to some of the social, environmental, and cultural values that will guide us into a safe and inclusive future. And I think what's fascinating about DLT is the potential that, because the flow of data across these networks is fundamentally data, that you can begin to attach values to them, whether it's the provenance of goods, where things come from, ethically, socially, or the ability to program social values into smart contracts. I think for the first time we can see design collectively supporting the safe and clean, inclusive development of services that we want in the future. So briefly, we need more experiments like this. Congratulations on driving experiments, because they drive collaboration, they also drive stories that help us envision. So I hope today we'll see the clues of these new decentralized imaginaries, and congratulations to the team for leading on them.
Thank you so much, Chris, and thank you to all the 5 panelists. Again, a lot of ideas. Maybe picking up on something you all touched upon, and in one way or the other, but asking you directly now, and I'll follow the order. So first, Alice, what do you think is the role of programs such as DLT4EU and other similar experimental models, acceleration, incubation in public and social sectors, to support early stage innovation in these social and public sectors? So what can we tell whoever is out there making the decision or with the money flashing, what can we tell them to support this? Alice, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Alex. That's a really good question. I think for us, it's very much about the fact that these virtual field lab structures act as a microcosm for so many challenges experienced across the European Union for the public and social sectors. So to give an example, we all know that GDPR is fantastic, but has also been quite a barrier to some of the development around data sovereignty solutions. So helping citizens port their data from country to country or from service provider to service provider. We actually had a VFL focused exactly on this between ATEC and the city of Helsingborg in Sweden, which really kind of threw up this kind of barrier, because the Swedish government has a very kind of local interpretation on top of GDPR as well. And so through the VFL, what we were able to do is actually bring those actors within the government who work on GDPR and also the compliance around it to the table of innovation very early on in the ideation and scoping phases. And so through that experience, ATEC were able to learn about what their solution needed to fulfill. The local city also learned about exactly how GDPR affects what they would like to provide to their citizens. And then also citizens themselves learned exactly what this all means for them. It's something that's taken for granted that we think everyone wants access to their own data, but what does that actually look like? What does it mean on a daily basis? And so that's why this is critical, is because you get to take something that we know is a big barrier, really dig into it in a deep collaborative sense, very early on in the process, where you can actually make those design choices into any solution or service that you're trying to develop. And that's really what we found across all 8 VFLs. That was the power of it.
Great. Amazing. Julio, again, what would you say? What's the role of programs like this?
Well, I think some of it already been said, but to state the obvious, the famous saying, those who said cannot be done should not stop those who are already doing it. You basically are demonstrating that it's actually possible to do it. So if anybody else in the public sector says, oh no, we cannot possibly do this, we cannot do it all virtually, whatever, you proved it, right? It can be done. The second thing, which I think I really very much like what Joao put it, a prototype in the policies, right? It's a place to accelerate the learning about a number of different issues. And I think one of the things that I really hope programs like this can do is to, even if they're called, if they say blockchain for or DLTs for social good, is to actually move us away from technological solutionism, right? So actually understand that what is actually at stake here is, yes, understanding the use cases for a particular technology, but if we really want to solve social issues that are particularly complex, there's a myriad of other things that need to happen. And this is, again, where the prototyping comes into place, to just understand the ramifications. And a little bit like Alice was saying, when you start from a point solution, understand that actually this opens up a whole set of broader issues, regulatory, behavioral, social, discriminatory or inequality, right? All these other issues that we want to tackle. And if we can actually open up that conversation, I think it's a fundamental role. And the final thing I would say, again, back to what Chris was saying about imaginaries, right? So the UAE, where I worked as a Ministry of Possibilities, and I think in a sense, you are creating a mini Ministry of Possibilities inside the public administration, showing that it's actually possible to really reimagine issues by testing it out and proving that it's possible to do it.
Thank you, Julio, and thank you all for mentioning that we need to move away from technological solutionism. I think what the DLT4EU did quite well was to opt for a value-driven approach to the development of the solutions, and I think it shows quite well also in not only in the top 3 but also in all the others. So maybe Francesca, maybe to give it a little bit of a twist, maybe some best practices, something that you learned in your past roles. How can we explain to public and social organizations that these might be models to follow?
Again, right. I'm being very... I really agree with what has been said before. So just building on what Julio and Alice said, I think for me, this is a very important point. I mean, without stressing the question of technological solutionism, we do not need to start from technology, really, in the public sector. We need to start from concrete problems that they are facing in delivering services to citizens. This is I think, a very important learning. So in order to evaluate a series of possibilities when it comes to how technology can help us to achieve delivering better services that are more tailored to citizen needs, then we all the time have to have a spectrum of possibilities. And the fact that your program is value-based, it means it will have to act a lot on the cultural aspects, on capacity building, on training of the public administration. And this is also crucial for me because when I in Barcelona, as you know, we prototyped and scaled a very big project based on distributed ledger technologies, which was, presenting advanced cryptographic protocol, very innovative, built by the project from scratch, that was enabling citizens to have better control of their data and decide what data they wanted to keep private, what data they want to share, with whom they want to share the data, and on what terms. Obviously, we were presenting a type of technology, already cryptography, so encryption. It is, of course, at the very core of what GDPR should mean, because how do you really enforce GDPR? It is about strong cryptography as a human rights for citizens. But then, of course, in the public sector, even if you have a lot of compliance people, so a lot of people that are very trained on compliance, on GDPR, they're maybe not trained on cryptographic protocols. So we had a double challenge there. We had to make the technology simple to use, accessible, and taking into account also what Julio said, that it's not only technological problems, but it's questions of inequalities, it's questions of access of all kinds, and also the socioeconomic models that you are building into the technological service. But at the same time, so we had this problem of making it accessible and easy so that everybody could test the technology and enjoy the benefit. On the other side, we had a really big challenge in training the people in the public administration, understanding. So it's an organizational and cultural shift, really big, I think, that has to happen. And then training. So you have to invest in human resources and capacity inside the public administration. So I would see programs like yours, if you really want to embed those programs, I mean, if you really want to change the public sector, then it has to be built internally. You have to build in capacity there and get your promote also the people inside. So I've said two things before. I would love to see more public administration hiring open source and DLTs community leaders inside, So let's just get them in so that they can lead those programs. But on the other end, you want to promote internally in the organizational structure, which we know is very top down, and not always you have the people that want to experiment that are able to do that because the incentives are very low. I mean, not only the need, sorry, I'm going a bit long here, but it's important to understand that regulation, it's not the problem. Regulation is designed actually pretty well. It's how you interpret the regulation and you push the boundaries of what is possible. This is what's difficult because there is no incentive for public sector people to do that. So you need to promote and put in a position of experimentation, give them space, resources, and trust to people that want to do it. And build cross-functional teams because it's going to always have to deal with different departments, with human resources, with procurements, with the way you build tech. So it's different expertise that are all spread across the organization. And you need to gather them together, give them space, give them trust, and then put them in an enabling condition to really scale this kind of solutions. But the aim should not be the technology. The aim should be something visible that improves the life of communities and citizens. This is my advice, because at the end it has to be, the policymakers have to be able to explain what it is, and they're not going to go around saying DLTs. Guys, forget about this, Jared. I mean, this is not the way. They're going to have to say it improves mobility, it improves, the fight against climate change, affordable housing, a better city, better participation. It's not going to be about DLTs.
No, thank you so much, Francesca, for all that, for all those comments. And I'm glad that João is the one following, because he, in fact, is a policymaker inside the national government with decision capacity. So, João, my question for you would be, how would you convince yourself, well, maybe not yourself because you're already convinced, but how would you convince your colleagues and someone above you to really adopt this kind of models and experimentation and use a lot what Francesca said? How can we really implement this at a large scale inside public organizations, especially because I also know about the European Social Innovation Fund, launched a long time ago and it was quite successful. So maybe you can mix a little bit of both. Your new role.
Yeah, it's a trick question, but thank you. Well, as we've been mentioning, we need to first of all help the cultural on the social sector to evolve a little bit. It's actually procurement is actually an issue, because how do you procure something that you cannot describe or something that's really we don't understand? Or we can work on that. We can really teach people around this specific kind of technology and how to procure that. We even have at the European Union level procurement mechanisms such as partnerships for innovation that actually in some way reproduce. It's not a kind of acceleration program. It is a step-by-step growing definition of what we buy. I don't know what your particular experience in that. Ours isn't very much at all, because it's a complex issue used normally on big consortiums on Horizon 2020 programs. So it's difficult to use those kind of procurement mechanisms to really foster innovation at an early stage. So maybe if I have this opportunity to suggest for the Commission to see if there's a chance to involve the procurement legal framework at the European Union level to make it more agile for public entities to develop these kind of processes in a very systematic way. But beyond capacitation, beyond trying to develop these kind of mechanisms, I think really exploring this kind of models of acceleration and bringing to the table public entities, I think it's the way. It's the solution. And as I've mentioned on my early comments, we need to balance very much the way we design these programs, because even though alignment with the priorities are important, and for example, for our experience, when we designed, for example, the social impact bonds model, we really wanted to to those specific projects to address priorities of public policy. And actually, in the model, public agencies were part of the consortium, and with all the legal obligations of receiving a European social fund model. So they really had to be part of the design of the model to validate the outcomes and the outputs. So alignment is very important for some. But also we need to have some more open playground for innovation, you know, support things that come out of the box, things that provoke the way we are addressing social issues. So I hope in the next stage of the Portugal social innovation model, at least I have proposed that, they have this kind of mechanisms, more behaved and more aligned and a more wild funding innovation that really challenges the status quo, because innovation can sometimes go to the status quo point, you know, it starts behaving too much well. Also, of course, alignment with public policy priorities is hard on itself. Alignment, investment of public entities with these priorities is also a second challenge, because I'm always asking what is the day after this kind of acceleration programs. We can have them on the table, we can nurture these ventures. What's going to happen next to these 8 ventures after? Because probably the winners will have the sufficient funding. Probably the other ones, this is top ventures here. Probably the others will have, but maybe a lot of them have left on the way. And what happens here? How can we finance more of this? And also on the regulation part, I think, as Francesca mentioned, regulation is normally not a problem in itself, but we are always being challenged by, for example, new technologies that do not fit existing regulation. That is why I mentioned the creation of regulatory sandboxes, because, well, most of the times they will be not needed. We are testing beyond the boundaries of existing regulations. But for example, in financial applications of DLTs, maybe that's needed, for example, to bring financial regulators to the table and making them understand these kind of concepts. So to wrap up, I think working with my colleagues on developing these kind of sandboxes is also helpful, because we don't hear that the answer, it's not possible. Well, let's create the conditions to make it possible.
Thank you so much, João. Now, moving to Chris. Chris, I also have a twist here for you, because I know your work quite well and you've been quite successful in prototyping and speculative. You also have a really interesting project done with Oxfam, one of the largest ones that I know at the beginning of DLT for Good, whatever we want to call DLT for Good. So maybe, Chris, you could tell us a little bit about not only these models of acceleration, but how can experimentation and prototyping help social and public organizations to look at this kind of, more open processes of including DLTs?
Sure. I mean, I think many of us are speaking of what I think of as design processes, and it's really terrific to hear that in some ways an iterative and inclusive methodologies are core to what we're all doing, whether that's in social spaces, through government, through regulation, but it's in the design of things that allow people to move to different models. The example, Alex, you're talking about is where we've launched an application, first trial in last year with Oxfam Australia, which allowed people to use a DLT platform. They didn't know or care, and that's the problem with these things, but it allowed them to build a smart contract with an environmental event. So if within the next 7 days there is an earthquake, if of a certain order, then I will move money into that need. So beginning to allow people to have more agency. And I don't think we've covered agency yet. I think it's implicit in what Francesca's been saying, certainly in Alice, and the idea that these are multi-sided complex problems. And design does a very good job at bringing as many people along as possible. I think something I've learned is, and perhaps referring to Yao as well, that you've got this opportunity to think through agile. And that's not easy for public services. How do we talk about agile? And central to agile is build, measure, learn. And I think that's what you've done very, very well indeed, is instantiate projects that allow you and colleagues and the winners, if you like, to understand how to build, measure, learn with DLTs for public services. Now, what does that give us? Well, you're building things. You've got to do something in the world. You've got to make a change, an intervention. And you'll find out very quickly if you measure it, whether it was a failure or a success, or more realistically, which bit was successful and which was problematic. And that's really vital, right? Because the learning then needs to loop back and we go again. We build, measure, learn iteratively. And we find out who we're taking with us, who we're not taking with us, and where it might become something that gets too close to Silicon Valley and it doesn't hold our values. And when perhaps other occasions we find breakthroughs to begin to break down these centralized imaginaries, which seem to be blocking not innovation and not about the technology, but just doing things fundamentally differently. So yeah, absolutely sign up to, I think everyone in the program is a designer now, because I think we're starting to think iteratively and inclusively and starting to build, measure, learn. So I think there's fascinating questions of what you do next. What was central when we did the judging, if you don't mind me saying, was what are the business models? Because it was really great to see that these aren't just flash in the pans, that actually all the participants are starting to demonstrate, well, how do you make this stand up? If it's going to stay in the world, it's going to have to slowly find a sustainable way after this program. And I think those questions of longevity remain important. But look, let's just get back to build, measure, learning, finding out how we make a difference.
No, Chris, thank you so much for your input here. And again, this connects quite well with the question that comes from Twitter. Your build, measure, learning, and it is, how can we measure this? Because it's quite difficult sometimes, and again, I'm also on the policy side, and a lot of you are. How can we go back and tell whoever is making the final decision, this worked? This is not only, we didn't only play with some funding for 1 year. We have a success story here. How do we explain this? Because, it's not, sometimes it's not because, they really maxed out their seed capital. Sometimes just because they developed something on the ground that worked for 10 people. And this was already a huge success. So question for all of you, maybe following the same order, maybe quick because we have 10 minutes maybe. How do we really explain, how do we measure success in these fields? Alice?
Yeah, really good question. Simple answer for me. We know that 5 out of the 8 VFLs have already committed to going into a second phase of development with their challenge owners. 2 of these are simply pending because of the ongoing COVID crisis, which prevents them from meeting in person and running pilots. So let's hope that they do get to do that. And only 1 in the program decided that their strategic interest had changed enough to not continue. So for us, that's success, right? It's kind of not about actually fulfilling the parameters of the accelerator or the requirements. Longevity that Chris talked about. It's about long-term relationships. It's about learning. It's about actually grassroots change. It's about thinking how almost what the civics of public sector organizations are and looking for and helping facilitate those really quite fundamental shifts in organizational behavior and structures. One of the things that we were really keen on for DLT4EU is that it wasn't like a burden for the public sector to participate in. It needed to fit into their daily running of their organizations. And of course, the pandemic kind of threw everyone out of kilter for the last year and will continue to do so. But it begs the question of, should we be talking and measuring resilience, not technological output or number of users or, the kind of standard metrics that you think of when we talk about digital technology? So that's my 10 cents.
No, thank you, Alice. Maybe moving to Julio and Julio, maybe picking up, because I know, the UNDP Accelerator labs on the ground, you have several of them, more than 50. I don't know how many are already running. And you might have a really good point here on how to explain how you measure success on the ground. So Julio, floor is yours.
Yeah, building again on what Alice was saying, I think the metrics that we have now are often quite pointless to actually measure the type of things that we're discussing. I'm also, very much tainted by my own personal experience. I used to work at Climate Kick, and they funded an awful lot of startups very successfully. But when a new CEO came in and said, "Well, what did we really do to change the trajectory of climate change?" And that was a very different type of question, right? And so I think that's a couple of things for me that are quite important. One is, if it is a value-driven, can we actually have metrics that speak to that? Have we shifted the needle, or are we going to shift the needle on some of the issues that we are working about? Back to Francesca was saying, the public sector person will care, have we really improved mobility? Have we really improved, social services, whatever? Can we actually try to say what we are doing at least gets an inch closer to that? And to do that, I think one of the things that we are not able to capture effectively is quality of learning and rate of learning. And this is a series of things that I think we are very much trying to explore right now with our Accelerator labs. What does actually that look like? How do you measure it? Variety, diversity, and quality of learning. The other thing that I think would be interesting, particularly for a program like yours, to explore is social network analysis, right? What are the new networks that were built through this program, and what they actually originated? But how can we actually show a different type of impact in that way? And then I think one thing which is extraordinarily difficult and almost impossible to measure, and many decision makers will not care, but in my experience, is the question of passion. I don't know what is your experience, but public sector officials that are involved in some of these programs feel a strong reconnection with the cause through the type of programs that they work with. I don't know if you have a similar experience. Ours is definitely the case. Now, that is something that is not easy to measure in metrics, probably. But it's something that to me is really quite important in terms of actually moving forward with type of programs.
Thank you so much, Julio. Francesca, the floor is yours.
Yeah. Well, I loved what Julio just said about passion, but I think that's like purpose also. And I think it is absolutely critical to regain this purpose in the way we do things. And I also, of course, agree on the question of diversity and rate of learning, which is very important to measure, because actually those are experiments, and your capacity, I think this is very much linked to scale. You need to scale. You really need to scale. And it does not only mean in size, it means to bring experiments into a service, into something sustainable, into something that can link in a real, for example, city service, a real, something that can be offered to citizens. This is a big step forward. It is something you need to be able to demonstrate, and you can demonstrate it, I think, linked to two things, the learning part, but also engagement. Engagement is a very important thing to show, like how communities engage, how developers engage, what is the participation of SMEs, what is the participation of citizens. For us, this when I run these experiments in the public sector, it is very, it gives legitimacy to the experiments if you can show that there is a wide community engagement into the program, because it links also to purpose and to learning, and to scale. Scale is very important. And then let me say something here. We do need to show, if you are thinking about public sector and make this more stable, the economic impact. We do need to show that. And I think, for instance, for me, there are two main things here. One is to show this lowering the barrier of participation is very important. If you can show how many SMEs participated, we do have an absolute problem in Europe that SMEs are not really spontaneously innovating. They're not really taking part in this program for many different reasons, and also startups, and also cooperatives, communities, and social organizations. So if you can show that there is a very strong level of participation, it is an economic development measure, because of course you are going out there where the investment is needed. And the other very important point is that you can show your shifting budget. Maybe you cannot show exactly how much money you are making, but you are saying, for instance, we are shifting some budget. I mean, now this applies to, for example, shifting to open source or some of these decentralized solutions. We are shifting from spending money on licensing and spending money on, depending on big consultancies for maintaining our programs, into investing in human capital and capacity internally. On the long run, this is a lot of saving, and you can run simulations on how much you're saving on let's say medium long term. So you need to do this, and then of course, can we really transfer these experiments into the creation of real business with an economic account that can be sustainable? Well, if you also manage to do that, fantastic.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. João, how do we measure impact? How do we measure success? How do you do it?
It's always challenging to come after Francesca in these issues. So we have been thinking a lot on this since we are mobilizing European Social Fund. We are much all stick to the outputs and outcomes measure, which is somehow limited, if probably you agree, and not measuring the impact, the persistent and long-term impact. But I think on the issue of measuring success, we can look at the program and we can look at the ventures. And I think all these three dimensions that I will speak about can be applicable to both these levels. And first of all, we have the efficiency. Is for example, the process or the venture itself more efficient than we have before? Of course, this cannot be measured all the times, because sometimes we are solving new problems or the model is completely disruptive and we don't have a baseline to base our comparison. Then we have a second dimension, which is financial. And by this, of course, we can look at the economic impact of the program as it helped develop new solutions that have social and impact economic, but have the ventures been financial sustainable? Have they lived after that? And by financial sustainable, of course, they can be for profit and they can be non-for-profit. If they are integrated in the public policy, maybe profit doesn't make sense to be spoken about. And then, which is what we aim from with some of our mechanisms, such as the social impact bounds. And the third dimension is policy. Has it have an influence in public policy? Has it been adopted? Has it been copied in some way? Some of it has been used to redesign or design new policies. Has it helped, as Francesca was mentioning, has it scaled up? Has it just been a good experiment in the local level, has become a national or regional wide policy? And that is something we are trying to measure, not on all the projects we fund, most especially on those that are already somehow aligned, but also when we do sessions of showcasing all the other projects that are not specifically aligned with public policy, we see the reaction. We see, for example, well, 3 or 4 years ago, coding academies being copied by public policy and being spread as an institutional educational offer, and that's a success, even though it wasn't the same venture that used. So, to wrap up, I think it's a multi-level and multi-dimensional assessment that does not fit the way, for example, in European funding, we normally measure outputs and outcomes. So maybe, once again, a note to the Commission, maybe we can also test innovative ways to measure the application of funding at this level and make the necessary adoptions to other funding sources.
Thank you so much, João. Note taken, and I know Fabrice is also there, so Fabrice, you take notes, please. Chris, maybe moving to you, and because you'll be the last intervention, and because you're going to have the venture teams after, and because you were a part of the jury, in fact, how do we measure success? How did you think that these 8 teams, or the 3 top ones, what would you say moving forward for other programs? What can we tell them?
Well, I mean, look, that's hard to follow all of, look, some brilliant insights, right, at every possible level. And I suppose just to follow is data. You're going to need some great data to follow all of those KPIs or metrics. So thinking about what the data capture models, and I was really particularly taken by Julio's idea of social network analysis, because you're going to need some instruments. But me, well, what sticks are stories. I think you've generated some extraordinary stories, and I think we'll find when we see the final teams is it's in the storytelling, as though were memes. That project that talked about moving particular goods across Europe, that project that dealt with electricity or whatever it is, or dealt with self-sovereignty. And for me, it is, as a designer, it's about storytelling. And I'd really like to think that you've managed to find ways to keep the stories traveling, evolving, adding experiences which are on the ground for those stories. So as a designer, just keep telling the stories, and let's hope those memes become viral. They become opportunities for different communities, as people have said, across every stake in society, that they identify with the values of those stories. So for me, Alexander, it's all about storytelling, and if that will travel, that will be the thing that offers legacy and change.
And with storytelling, I think we reached the perfect ending here for our roundtable. I really would like to thank all of you. This has been a really interesting debate. This will be recorded, so for legacy, for the future, so everyone can follow. And because this is the last final event, and because I've been involved in this program for so long, I really want to thank all the organizations, especially Metabolic Institute, for leading, also Ideas for Change and Digital Catapults. I also want to thank the European Parliament for granting us the pilot project a long time, 3 years ago, to do this. Also, the DG Connect, that was the main partner, Fabrice Cestini, that opened this. And the Joint Research Center of the European Commission, we've been supporting the program since the beginning. So I want to also thank all the colleagues involved. And again, thank you for all your work. And let's hope that in 1 year we see all these venture teams being amazing, being supported by new programs and new funding and just putting stuff out there. Godspeed to you all.
And thank you so much to you, Alex. And of course, to all speakers. That was very, very inspirational. We can listen to you all day, but we have to move on to the outcomes of the Accelerator. These are centered around 2 themes, circular economy and digital citizenships. The 8 participating teams, we call them venture teams, have worked on a solution in one of these 2 themes, and we've combined their plans in 2 videos. So this is what it's all about. While watching both videos, we'd like you to answer this question by scanning the QR code that you see right now or finding it via the link in the YouTube live chat. The question is, while seeing these solutions, do you think DLT is useful for tackling social and environmental challenges? You can answer yes, tell me more. Yes, but it looks complicated. Still a work in progress though, or I would need more time to check it out. So that's good to keep in mind while you're watching. We're starting with circular economy. In this video, you'll be introduced to the following projects. 1. Shared Mobility by venture team SICE and challenge owner Greater London Authority and London Legacy Development Corporation. 2. Collaborative e-waste management by venture team e-reuse and challenge owner Sandboxes City Council. 3. Track and trace supply chain transparency by venture team Convergence Stack and challenge owner UNDP Morocco. And 4. Enabling a citizen-powered circular textile sector by venture team Disco and challenge owner City of Amsterdam and Bach Society. Enjoy this video about the 4 innovative solutions for a circular economy.
core of the solution is a blockchain infrastructure that will accelerate the transition towards servitized business models, which will contribute to a more circular economy. The SISE infrastructure can be used to offer any kind of equipment as a service. The payment infrastructure with a stable digital currency has many possible new use cases. The infrastructure can even be used as a crowdfunding platform to finance great new services. We offer cities an easy, accessible infrastructure to offer public and non-public e-mobility transport modes for their citizens. We offer cities and service providers a decentralized infrastructure for pay-per-use business models.
Main beneficiaries today are children from low income families. The solution is a system that enables them to access to renewed computers to participate in online distance learning. And there are 3 types of stakeholders participating in the system. The first is the City Council as donor and supports the system by donating devices. And when its devices are reused, its environmental footprint is reduced and its social impact increase. The second stakeholder is social companies, are refurbishers, and that creates local jobs. And third stakeholders are receivers, such as schools that receives and allocate computers to final users that homeschool children.
Beneficiaries in this case are the woman-owned cooperatives themselves. We're empowering them to create data passports around the argan oil they produce on the back of some of their sustainability certifications that they can then sell to industry players and buyers who value this information to kind of drive more value back to the cooperatives and kind of act as a bit of an impact credit for the industry, rewarding sustainable behavior. So the solution itself, it's pretty simple. It's a simple mobile app to allow people to register their sustainably produced argan oil, attach additional branding and profile information to it, and attach digital proof of some of these sustainability certifications that the industry checks for when buying the oil. So the experience itself, it's very simple in terms of a few buttons to register. And then the end result is the oil gets a QR code unique to that oil, which is what creates traceability, allows these data passports to easily be inspected and validated.
This solution is an add-on to an existing circular economy application called Reflow. And the solution is an application for drop-off sites or pickup services to accept discarded textiles from citizens and calculate token rewards for their donations. And also citizens will have a map to see where they can donate the textiles and where they can spend the tokens. In the first pilot, the beneficiaries will be the citizens themselves, resale shops and other recyclers, local businesses, neighborhoods, and generally producers and consumers in the local textile sector.
Such amazing solutions and ideas, very inspiring. Let's find out more about what DLT can do to strengthen digital citizenship. Your attention for these 4 projects. 1. Charitable aid accountability for humanitarian agencies, venture team Alice, and challenge owner Vodafone Foundation and the Digital Future Society. Number 2. Enabling peer-to-peer energy solutions by venture team Prozoom and challenge owner UNDP Serbia and UNDP Alternative Finance Lab. Number 3, digital impact coins by venture team Akron and challenge owner UNDP Lebanon and UNDP Alternative Finance Lab. And number 4, enabling data sovereignty for all citizens by venture team AidTech and challenge owner City of Helsingborg. Enjoy this video about the 4 innovative solutions for digital citizenship.
Hello everyone, I'm Areti, one of Alice's 3 co-founders, and I'm in charge of product innovation at our company. Our product was applied on Vodafone's Instant Network Schools program, which offers digital learning content to children in refugee camps in Africa. offering essentially quality education to some of the most marginalized communities. Impact reporting nowadays takes place through very time-consuming manual processes. The cost that is generated from these repetitive processes can reach up to 30% of a project's budget. And in 2019 alone, that amounted to 124 million euros globally. Now, ALICE eliminates this cost completely, and it revolutionizes impact reporting for any impact-driven institution.
Hi, hello, I'm Alex Delia, president of Prosume. Our solution is actually a software tools like a toolkit which enable the energy stakeholders like energy providers and system operators, the one administering the infrastructures like DSO and TSO, to interact in a different way by decentralizing the governance of their infrastructure. With decentralized technologies and with renewable sources, the source of energy is actually equally distributed around the world. So everyone really can take advantage of this and use it for its own needs also.
So within our solution, we have multiple beneficiaries, starting with the one who will use the platform the most are the impact investors. Those are the people who would like to invest some money in socially important projects and to get some financial return on it. On our side, we have the beneficiaries on spot who will receive this funding, and this funding will be used for their projects. The overall concept and the difference between our solution and other solutions is that we are providing the digital proof. So we are providing the token, and this token gives to the investor possibility to really trade it in any time.
4 different concepts. So automatically saving your data once you sent in an application, and being able to read that information where it's stored locally on the device. The second concept was being offered other services which may be relevant to you. So using some sort of predictive analysis to say, if I apply for welfare, it may automatically trigger my potential to get, say, child allowance if I have 2 or 3 children, for example. And this is what we're thinking of, these concepts. So how can the data actually work for the user? What's the incentive for the user to actually use this service? Third concept was choosing to share your data anonymously, right? So I think the city of Helsingborg, one of the most forward-thinking municipalities in Europe, because they've open sourced everything. They were nominated for most innovative city of the year last year. I think they got in the final of the top 5. And basically they want to keep people's data secure, anonymous, and so on. And then the final one was choosing what data you share or you have shared with Helsingborg. All right, so you have almost, your data creates a summary for you. So if I apply for 5 or 6 different departments, social welfare, housing, driver's license, whatever.
I wish we could award all these projects with funding. So interesting and important. But let's see what you think. I have the outcomes here of the question, while seeing these solutions, do you think DLT is useful for tackling social and environmental challenges? Yes, tell me more, said 46%. Yes, but looks a bit complicated, 31%. Still a work in progress though, 19%, and I would need more time to check it out, 4%. So the vast majority of you really feels that this is something that is very, very useful for tackling social and environmental challenges. Thank you so much for your feedback. Now we're about to find out which teams will receive the additional funding for their projects. While we connect with our next guest who will be revealing this result, please bear with us for a moment while we try to get in touch with her. Now that we have an idea of what's been developed in the DLT4EU Accelerator, it's time for the moment of truth. Let's find out which 3 teams will receive additional funding to develop their solution further. To make this special announcement, we're very happy to welcome Marcella Azzori. Marcella is a blockchain advisor for various organizations, including the European Commission and the European Parliament. She's also a blockchain expert for the Italian Ministry for Economic Development and was part of the evaluation jury of this program. Marcella, here we go.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. Today is my honor and my pleasure as a member of the jury to present the 3 teams which are awarded the Follow-on funding. First of all, on behalf of the jury, I would like to thank all the teams which participated to this program because they have given their time and dedication and efforts to this experience throughout the years, sometimes even in a difficult context, and all of them deserve acknowledgement for sharing their knowledge and enthusiasm as innovators and game changers. So we really want to thank all the teams for their contribution. And as we said today, our special recognition will go to the 3 teams which will receive additional funding. The jury selected these teams according to several evaluation criteria. Firstly, we considered how the proof of concept solved the specific challenges that were proposed and how they met the needs of the final users. So we evaluated the effective level of innovation of their solutions. And here we paid particular attention, for example, to the way the decentralization addressed fundamental aspects at the social, legal, economical, and ethical level. But we also looked at other important factors such as the usability, the inclusiveness of users, the commercial feasibility, the scalability of the prototypes, and so on. Finally, we also wanted all the solutions to be open source. So the jury considered all these criteria, made the selection, and we will now recognize the 3 winners of today. The first team is eReuse. This project promotes the collaborative reuse of digital services in the city of Sandboxes in Spain. And this project is important not only for the environment, but also because it helps reducing social inequality. And that's why we also hope the solution will be replicated in many other cities. So congratulations to the eReuse team. We should have with us one of the members of this team.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Thank you for joining us all this month and for giving us the opportunity to solve the challenge from that Samboy municipality to be more circular and to be able to estimate the impact of its refurbished second-hand devices in population affected by digital inequality. And with blockchain, we want to highlight the quality of the contents, the mentors, and the following up of the project. We think these points distinguish this program. Some of the sessions has been a really masterclass, such as the presentation on DLT or governance, narrative, and communications, as well open source and innovative disruption. And we want finally to mention the valuable feedback documents we have received for its mentor after its speech. Now we can say that we are ready to extend device lifetime and to ensure properly recycling and to trace these devices with a standard protocol and accounting over multiple owners without affecting privacy and ensuring data reliability. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you very much to all your team, and congratulations again on this well-deserved accomplishment. So we can now proceed. We are now the second winner, and second winner is the Alice team. This project improves, evaluate, predict the performance of the humanitarian agencies involved, and this achievement is important because most of the humanitarian foundations actually struggle to streamline their aid program and demonstrate the real impact of their work. So congratulations to the Alice team for their great job done.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. So yeah, a few words about what we did and our challenge. We worked, as we said earlier, with the Vodafone Foundation, and what they do is they work with the United Nations refugee agencies, and they give the flourishing gift of education to refugee children in refugee camps in 4 African countries. So specifically, they give access to digital learning content on a tablet and, of course, to the internet. And after every class that's delivered there, they conduct surveys with both the students and the teachers. And then we, as Alice, take that plethora of data and we analyze it, we visualize it, and present not only the success of the program, but in a way, we follow these students through the skills acquisition, how well they're doing their exam results, and into university or job acquisition later. So we follow them building their lives out of poverty. So in a way, with our system, we give soul to this data and we piece together the life stories. And we do all of that on a completely decentralized infrastructure, which means that nothing that we store or operate is on a hackable server. So we ensure the absolute privacy of these children and prevent any stigmatization for their future. DLT4EU enabled us to do that, and we were lucky enough to work with the warmest and most authentic people which I've ever met. And if we were to describe it in one word, the whole program, that would be absolutely human, genuine, authentic, and an amazing experience. We're very, very grateful.
Thank you very much, and congratulations once again. And now, last but not least, our third winner, and the third winner is Okay, sorry. Okay, thank you. So the last winner is Convergence Stack. This team created a blockchain-based traceability platform which helped the Arganol cooperatives in Morocco to achieve better market access and also derive more value from their products. These are important results for the environment, for the local population involved, and also for the final consumers in Europe. So congratulations to Convergence Stack for tackling these challenges and for this great achievement.
Yes, thank you very much. Very excited to be a part of this and be here and kind of use DLT4EU to kind of kick off some of this work we're doing, specifically leveraging DLT technology, generally for digital identity and traceability. And in this case, with this use case, we were able to put them together to really kind of look at how we can create fairer and more transparent supply chains. I think the real innovation here that we learned through consultation of all the on-the-ground stakeholders here in the industry was really looking at how we can package up this traceability information with the sustainability certifications that industry checks anyways for purchasing reasons, and then actually kind of put that into a data passport for the argan oil in this case that can be registered and sold by the cooperatives. That drives money back to the cooperatives and kind of operate as a bit of an impact credit for the industry, let's say. So that's really kind of one of the elements we're excited to sort of trial out with this, as it's one of those channels that creates sustainability and kind of operate some of the technology on an ongoing basis. So the program's been great in terms of our learnings, our connections to the industry, some of the co-ops, some of the representatives and sustainability certification groups in the region. Really has kickstarted sort of what we're doing there, and we're happy to continue the work as a part of this. Presently lining up a field trial for next month, actually, where we're going to be working with one of the cooperatives directly to sort of start registering some argan oil and show how this thing works. So very grateful to be part of the program. Thanks.
Thank you very much, and congratulations once again. So these were the 3 teams which will receive additional funding. We're happy to know that you all will have the possibility to carry on with your projects. We said it today, DLT still represent a highly experimental sector. We still have to grow, but we have to make the best of these new emerging technologies, especially when they're oriented to the social and public good. And I have to say, your enthusiasm, your commitment the commitment of all the venture teams were truly inspiring in this sense. So thank you, and I think it's now time for us to wrap up. Thank you to everyone today for making this a very successful program and event.
Thank you so much, Marcella Azzori, and huge congratulations to all funded projects, but of course to all of you for your game-changing creations, and best of luck with realizing such impactful plans. To close this session, please welcome Ana Igueras. She's project manager at Ideas for Change and communication lead of the DLT4EU project. Ana is a content creator and specialist in social innovation, digital culture, science, art and technology, and responsible for this final event. Ana.
Thanks, Marike. Thanks everyone that accepted the challenge of speaking today of such complex topics in such a short amount of time. We knew it was challenging, but we've managed to do it. So thanks for running against the clock today in the first instance. I will try to be very brief, as everything is probably said and discussed today. We've seen an amazing roundtable with super valuable insights. We've seen the 2 videos from the venture teams that have made the results of this program possible. But I would really like to take 2 minutes of your time to emphasize that the effort of these last 17 months to create this living ecosystem around the solutions that use blockchain to improve transparency, trust, and traceability of resources in the social and public sectors is not aimed to end here. Our goal is to try to help the community to keep moving forward, learning from what needs to be improved, testing the solutions in the right environment, and obviously providing the right mechanisms, and also promoting what fosters the impact of this type of early stage innovations. To do so, in about 3 weeks at the end of this month, we will be sharing the final report of the DLT4EU program. And this final report, I think it's the key piece of the legacy of this project, because it's designed to work as a practical guide for those who want to understand how we have curated the accelerator, which are the lessons learned, and what have been the success stories. The report could be consulted from different angles and is aimed to be useful in the first instance, obviously for the European Commission that has funded us, but also for public entities and public bodies that would like to test with these early stage innovations that we have been testing through the program. And also for consortiums and venture teams that are considering to apply to similar programs. We will also be sharing some other legacy materials. We have just published 8 videos from the venture teams that allow you to go deeper in the solutions, and that will be on our website. And finally, we are also about to release 2 videos that want to integrate the citizen perspective in this ecosystem conversation. Those 2 videos are framed into how DLTs can contribute to address common challenges, such as, for example, trust in public institutions or charities, and on the impact that our actions can have when reusing or extending the life of our everyday objects. So please, this is all to say, keep the conversation open and do help us to bring the results and the lessons learned from the program forward. Thanks everyone that made this event possible. Thanks to the both technical teams, AMT and the Westerpark studios that connected from Barcelona and from Amsterdam. Thanks to the 8 venture teams, to the consortium, to the incredible speakers that we have today with us, and mostly to the audience that accompanied us today and that will maybe check and watch this video later, because that's recorded and that will be also part of the legacy. It's a real pleasure to have you here, today. And Marike, over to you to wrap it up. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anna. And I can only echo what you say. Thank you so much to all speakers and contributors of today, and most of all to you for taking part and for your dedication to a better world through technology. All the best with your important work to make it happen, and have a great day. Thank you. Bye.